So, a lot of people have been asking me about health and general fitness recently with a good deal of questions. What should I eat? What should I do? And, questions that are a lot more complicated and nuanced than that. And I'm no sports trainer or qualified professional by any means, but I have been in pursuit of my own personal fitness myself for a little over 6 years now, give or take. And in that time span have been able to see, I would say, significant results. Both in performance and in look and appearance, I guess, for those of you who are really into that. So I can at least share with you what I know. Now, fitness is very deep, a very complex study that is constantly ongoing, and like all developing sciences, new and interesting discoveries are constantly being made all the time. So this is by no means a finalized guide, and I encourage you to do additional research and look up additional information about fitness if you are interested in the topic. That said, everything I recommend in here, and I mean everything, is being mentioned here because I myself have done it. I have done it, and I don't recommend these things simply because I've read it on bodybuilding.com or some random blog or something. I've done it, and I have found it to be true and helpful, and thus I have added it to my repertoire. So just keep that in mind. I'm not putting stuff on here because I think that it's just, oh, well, people all say this, and it's generally useful, so yeah, I'm going to say it too. No. I've done this stuff. I know for a fact that this stuff works because I've seen it work in my own life. So, with that said, here are 5 critical pointers I encourage you to consider if you are looking to get into fitness or, just starting to get into fitness. You're only been doing it for maybe a year or so. So, number 1, my number 1 tip, the most important thing to do before you ever look up a single workout or lift a single dumbbell is to know your own body. What is your body type? What is your current fitness level at? What are your goals for your body? Are they realistic goals that can be achieved with the resources that you currently have? And if that's the case, and if they can be achieved, how long is that going to take? These are important questions to be asking yourself if you are on the outset of getting into fitness or thinking about getting into fitness. And you don't necessarily have to answer all of these questions right now, but you should think about them. And you should, in thinking about them, you should consider what it is you're actually after here, getting into fitness. So, to that end, and to help you, answer those questions and start thinking about that end, I introduce the mighty morphing body types. Anyways, these body types carry with them a unique set of advantages and disadvantages that are important to know about in order to best utilize their respective strengths, while mitigating their sometimes frustrating weaknesses. The first body type is the ectomorph, which is marked by a thin face with a high forehead and a receding chin, typically at least, a narrow chest and abdomen, a narrow heart, but rather long, thin arms and legs with little body fat and little muscle, but a large skin surface and a large nervous system. The biggest mark of the ectomorph is that it is very difficult for them to gain weight of any kind, be it muscle or fat. They tend to be pretty capable at cardiovascular exercises and distance running if they are trained towards that end, which I would say is the biggest strength the body type has. It just naturally has a good tilt towards cardiovascular, especially if it's trained to that end. However, if you fall into this body type, I would strongly consider setting goals for gaining weight, in particular muscle, which will involve doing greatly reduced cardio and greatly increased anaerobic exercises or weightlifting exercises. To that end, I have a link recommendation in the description of this video. This guy basically offers some essential tips for ectomorphs to gain weight, and his accent is kind of funny. He's European, I believe, but his information is really good, so I would definitely check out that video if you are an ectomorph. Following the ectomorph is the oft-praised and over-idolized body type of the mesomorph. The extreme mesomorph has a square, massive head, broad, muscular chest and shoulders, and a large heart, heavily muscled arms and legs, and minimal body fat. They tend to develop muscle easily. Their muscular development can usually be distinguished from that of one who has developed muscles through bodybuilding exercises, and the reason for that is because their muscle usually exists irregardless of whether or not these people are working out or not. The most clear-cut advantage, and some would argue the greatest of all the types, is that the mesomorph naturally just puts on and develops muscle. They already have muscle, and not only that, but if they work out, they will develop even more muscle. Think Arnold Schwarzenegger, folks like that. it is not uncommon for them to have distinguished muscle without ever doing, as I mentioned before, any exercises at all. Needless to say, those who pursue exercise tend to do quite well for themselves and acquire muscle mass and weight very, very quickly. However, in a somewhat ironic twist, the additional mass and weight tends to become cumbersome for them when they pursue cardio, and they can quickly run into heart health issues if they choose to ignore like the cardio side of their health. So if you fall into this what I would call slightly rare body type, try to shoot for a good balanced routine of both aerobic and anaerobic exercise to acquire both lean muscle alongside a healthy heart, which I would say is critical to maintaining muscle development in general. So the two are intertwined. And then lastly, we have the endomorph, which is lambasted as the worst almost as often as the mesomorph is praised as the best. The extreme endomorph has a body that is nearly, about as globular as humanly possible. They have a round head, a large round abdomen, large intestinal organs relative to their size, rather short arms and legs with fat upper arms and thighs, slender wrists and ankles. Under normal conditions, the endomorphic individual has a great deal of body fat, but they're not simply a fat person. That's something to keep in mind here. It's if starved, he remains an endomorph, or the person who's an endomorph, still retains their general body shape of roundness. It's just they are thinner. Hence, it has more to do with the rounded shape of the body rather than the body fat, although the body fat does typically tend to accompany it. So the most notable feature of the endomorph is that whereas the mesomorph has an easier time putting on muscle weight, the endomorph has an even easier time putting on general weight. They acquire muscle as fast, if not even faster, than the mesomorph, which is, a nice advantage. The problem is it is rare for them to acquire that muscle without acquiring an equal amount of body fat. That said, the capacity for strength performance from an endomorph is actually enormous with the correct exercise, and at the higher end of training, it is not uncommon for endomorphs to outperform even mesomorphs in terms of raw strength. So if you are an endomorph, your first goal and desire might be to lose weight, in particular the body fat weight, but paradoxically, what you should probably pursue first is to gain muscle weight while adding increased cardio with a diet that focuses on lean gaining. And the reason for that is when you have more muscle mass, muscle tends to burn a lot more calories in general when it is present. And so what that means is if you have muscle mass, that means that you will be burning those calories and by extension, body fat when you were doing cardio much more effectively because you'll have this, muscle mass that will really help you to that end. Which is why I would say gain the muscle first, then focus on cutting out body fat. These body types are not, they're not hard and fast rules, and it's not uncommon for people to be, a slight mixture of the types that I just mentioned here. For myself, I am generally an ectomorph with a tilt towards being a mesomorph as well a little bit, but rest assured, if I don't eat, it's generally pretty hard for me to grow muscle of any significant kind at all. And that's the sort of thing I'm generally trying to get you to think about here by bringing up the body types. By examining your body and learning your type, you understand both what your weaknesses are and your strengths. And by understanding both what you are strong at and what you are weak at, you are better able to equip yourself with the one to conquer the other. You can overcome what your weakness is by capitalizing on what your strength is. For example, if you are an ecto, use your natural tilt towards cardio to put in more time towards strength-building exercises and proper food consumption to grow muscle mass and strength. If you are a mesomorph, take full advantage of the fast gains you can make while also making sure that you have a good heart health with consistent cardio. So it's almost the opposite. You want to maybe put a little more time towards cardio. If you are an endomorph, take advantage of how quickly you can put on muscle and then utilize lean eating with the high calorie burning of the added muscle to burn the fat so that you, can lose that fat and replace the weight that you have in body fat with muscle weight and then reshape your body in that way as well. At the same time, use your body type as a guide to setting the types of goals you want to set up for your fitness as well. As some goals that you have for yourself or you have preset going into considering fitness might be a little bit ridiculous. So, for example, if you're an ectomorph, it is ridiculous as it is impossible a goal for you to be gunning for a bod like Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's insane. Unless you intend to thoroughly abuse steroids, which you don't, by the way. it is far more practical for you to slowly gain weight and acquire strength. Vice versa, if you are an endomorph, it is both unrealistic and wildly dangerous and unhealthy for you to pursue a runway model, stick figure thin body. It makes much more sense to lose your fat weight and pursue reshaping your body using gained muscle weight. So that is my first and biggest piece of advice. Know your body before you work it and set realistic, achievable goals for it. So, my second major piece of advice. Consider your resources. Consider your limitations in terms of time, energy, and money. This is something that you need to do before you even begin training, alongside considering your body type is, how much are you able to give to setting up a new routine? And, if you are just starting to understand what a new routine is, you need to understand equally that a new routine is a must if you are serious about your goals. You have to create a new routine, a new lifestyle for yourself if you are going to achieve a new physical goal, pretty much no matter what that physical goal is. So, how much time do you have in a given day? What time of the day do you have that time? Can you make that time? Or are you doing anything that can be dropped in order to make that time? And besides time, you will likely need to alter the things that you eat as well. Can I afford fresh produce on a regular basis? Can I afford a muscle-building supplement like protein powder or protein bars? If not, what are some cheaper alternative sources of protein that I can get? These are the sort of questions that you need to be asking when considering what your resources are and whether or not you have enough resources to, make this new routine possible. Not to mention, considering, depending on what your goals are, you may need to consider getting equipment as well as muscle building, type gear, more or less. Exercise bands, dumbbells, a bench. Muscle building can only go so far without the use of weights, depending on what your goals are. Believe me, I tried for 4.5 years using only body weight. You can only get so far with body weight. Hence questions arise like, can I afford weights? Can I afford a gym membership? Where should I get a gym membership? Is it more cost-effective to get a gym membership? If I don't get a gym membership, can I get myself into a rhythm where I can work out alone and be okay with that consistently? If I'm not okay with working out alone regularly, do I need to get a gym membership? Again, more questions concerning resources and, at this point, I would say energy and mental outlook resources that you need to be thinking about. You might have noticed when discussing resources, I pretty much immediately brought up first time and then money. And that is because, as is typically the case when pursuing anything worthwhile, in order to achieve fitness goals, you will have to expend both. I'm not saying go for broke with the newest supplement or equipment, but you need to be ready to put a sizable amount of time down and at least a decent amount of money, though usually if you are spending money on other stuff, you will find it can be reallocated. You can sometimes pull from things that aren't as worth it and put that money that you're not really using for anything, worthwhile towards your fitness goals, if you're really serious about pursuing fitness, I would say. So that's my second tip. Know how much time and money you have, know how much of it can be used or recommitted to your fitness goals. And then my third tip, and this is probably the biggest one, bigger perhaps even than body type, I would say, is know what your food intake and needs are in accordance with your body type and in accordance with simply what is expected for fitness in general. So a lot of people who pursue fitness tend to ignore this absolutely critical step and then question why they aren't making any progress towards their goals a month or two later. Let me say it right now. What you eat has the single biggest influence on whether or not you see results. Let me say it again. Aside from actually exercising, what you eat is going to be the key determining factor on whether or not you see any results. Now, part of the reason a lot of people get mixed up here is because they aren't sure about what they are eating, or even if they know what they shouldn't be eating based on brand quality, or maybe they aren't sure, what to replace what they are eating with, This is a very deep topic so far as it relates to fitness goals, and it is probably the deepest part of the discussion, and it normally requires the greatest amount of research when you are first getting into fitness. So to that end, to help you guys out, I have included a link to a very helpful and informative article about dieting for muscle growth in the description of this video. It's called Flexible Dieting. Basically, discusses, how you can develop a very flexible diet that will still allow for adequate muscle growth. And I've also included a very important lecture by one Dr. Lustig from the University of California called Sugar, The Bitter Truth, which has been a massive influence on me, and I would say the guiding factor for what I've been eating the last 6 years of my life. I will also include another article called 10 Tips for Buying Nutritious Food on a Budget. For those of you who, based on the prior tip about resources, are trying to crunch on your resources a little bit and really get the most bang for your buck. Aside from that, I will say there are 2 simple things that you can do right now that will help you greatly in pursuing fitness at any level and for any body type concerning dieting or just eating goals in general. And, the first is strive to drink nothing but water and milk on a regular basis. I make exception for stuff like kombucha that has the probiotics in it and protein powder drinks. But, generally speaking, if it has sugar content in it, don't drink it. And the best way to be sure of that nowadays is to stick with water and milk, which, in the case of milk, it ideally shouldn't have any added sugar. The second thing I will say that will help greatly is strive to avoid processed food or, basically artificial food of any sort as much as possible. I say as much as possible because as long as you live in the United States, it is virtually impossible to actually have a diet with absolutely no processed foods in it at all. So much of the food that is available nowadays is processed, at least to some extent. If you are unsure what processed food is, I think a good way to think of it is to think of it as food with content in it that either doesn't occur naturally or is not natural at all, and thus is artificially produced, such as corn syrup. If you have to get processed food, try to be wise in your selection. Oro wheat bread, for example, is for a certainty going to be considerably less processed than anything that comes out of a fast food restaurant, like McDonald's. Let me also add that for those of you who are convinced, for whatever reason, that natural and organic foods are just a fad or simply a marketing ploy, you are dead wrong, and that's just all there is to it. Don't get me wrong, there are definitely stores that take advantage of it for marketing purposes, and they chalk up their prices to just outrageous and infeasible price ranges, such as Trader Joe's and, of course, the biggest offender, Whole Foods. But there are plenty of locations where unprocessed or minimally processed food is sold at a far more reasonable price range, such as Sprouts, for example. The reason I swear so strongly by organic and natural foods is because early on in my initial days of fitness training, I was also becoming aware not only of the truly harmful and negative effects of processed and artificial food when I was training, but also the equally beneficial and helpful effects of food that was not artificially processed. During that time period, I noticed, as some of you have noticed, that granola in particular gave me no heartburn when I ran, and it seemed to be helpful in getting results from lifting as well. During this time, I was simply adding more produce and less processed content into my diet, and the result was that within a mere 2 years of starting, I was a notably different-looking person than I was before I started doing fitness training. I've continued this trend of opting for natural and minimally processed foods, and I only continue to see health benefits from doing so. Now, in many cases, separate from only fitness training. I've seen benefits to stuff like my immune health and my sleep. It's very uncommon for me to get sick nowadays, so long as I'm, getting enough, proper nutrition and my sleep generally is better now, so long as I'm, going to bed at a reasonable time, than it was, I would say, definitely 3 years ago. Well, part of that was I was still living in Chicago, but all I can say is it has helped me enormously, and in ways that I firmly believe every body type can benefit from. That's what I will say about the organic side of things. The last thing I will say concerning food intake is that excluding sugar and highly processed foods, you should never completely emphasize or completely remove one thing or another from your diet. Yes, you will need to be consuming more protein, but not exclusively protein. Your body can only absorb so much of it before it turns to body fat. And you shouldn't cut out fat, because the truth is your body needs a good deal of that as well in order to produce muscle growth. You need everything in a good balance. Something else I'll say about food consumption is you need to understand the timing of how much to eat at a certain time. So, for example, you generally want an initial hit of protein and sugar with other essential nutrients after a session of exercising, usually in the form of a protein bar or a protein drink serving. followed within 2 hours by a larger, denser meal with a combination of protein, carbs, fats, and fibers. All of these, ideally unprocessed, if you can get it. At dinner, depending on what time you want to go to bed, try to eat something with a combination of lean protein and heart-healthy fats while avoiding sugar and high-density carbohydrates, as that could potentially, keep your body up a little bit later and prevent you from getting a good night's sleep. Again, as with the amount of food, so with the timing of food, strive for balance in your consumption in accordance with what body type you are and what your goals are. Again, the resources I have included in the description will hopefully help you a great deal and prove essential and comprehensive for you to develop an understanding of what that balance needs to look like and what it can look like, because you might be surprised a little bit. My fourth tip is do not ignore or forget rest. Your body only has so much energy. If you overclock your body and fail to allow it enough time to rebuild, you will only end up with doing enormous damage to your muscles and your body at large. And I have some personal experience in this regard. There was a point in time where I was working out at, of course I was working out, but I was working, my day job was a lawn mowing job. And that had me walking anywhere from 5 to 10 plus miles a day. And I was always pushing or carrying equipment that weighed a minimum of 20 pounds. So I would regularly do a day of work like this, and then come home after work only to immediately go for a 5 to 7 mile run or do pull-ups. During this time period, I stopped growing in terms of my muscle growth, and I began to be tired constantly. Even with 8 hours of sleep, I was just always tired. I was dehydrated regularly and always sore to the point where it was bizarre for the sensation of soreness to not be there. It's a miracle that I don't have any permanent damage to my body from this time period, and it's a blessing as well. But if you learn nothing else from my story, know that I was not moving any closer to my goals during this time in my life, at all. As a matter of fact, on reflection, I think it's safe to say I started moving backwards from my goals during that time period. So a good way to moderate your rest from the outset, before you even begin working out, is to factor in how many days a week you will work out in conjunction with how many days of rest you will have. So at the most, your body can work out hard with adequate time to repair about, 5 days a week, assuming you aren't an athlete or someone with access to top-of-the-line supplements that will let you basically live in a gym 24/7, 365. Make sure to vary the workouts you do in this time frame, and always allow for a 24-hour rest period of time between one body workout to the next. So, for example, for me, I do an upper body workout on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and then I do a lower body workout on Tuesdays and Thursdays. For cardio, I try to fit in a 30-minute walk at home when I can, or for the days where I don't have time, I will stand up at my desk, I work a desk job, and I will pace from one side of the cubicle to the other for either a few hours or at the minimum every 15 to 30 minutes on the hour. So, if it's 3 p.m., I'll just sit until 3:45 p.m. or 3:30 p.m., and then I'll walk for the remaining amount of that hour. I've recently started doing the incline on Saturdays as well, but this is not something that always cooperates with my schedule, and I'm still kind of experimenting with this to see if it's something that will allow me to continue working towards my goals without compromising my body's need for rest. Otherwise, to get results, I would say that you need, at minimum, 3 consecutive days of intense exercise. For example, day 1 could be an upper body, day 2 could be a lower body, and then day 3 could be another upper body, or vice versa, depending on what your goals are. I would follow this with moderate cardio activity, an hour jog or run or a 30-minute walk during the off days where you're not doing that intensive exercise. And this is a really good schedule for those of us who really struggle to find time or are just trying to maintain or develop a moderately healthy physique, which, is a perfectly fine goal, by the way. I don't think there's anything shameful about saying, the time just isn't there. I just want to try to be generally healthy in terms of my heart and my, the general fitness. 3 days of intense training, I think, is just fine. There's nothing wrong with that. On the other end of the spectrum, for those of us who are trying to reach their goals by a certain time frame, or simply have the time and energy to expend to pursue larger, long-term fitness goals, I would shoot for a maximum of 5 consecutive days of intense exercise, with either 3 days of upper body to 2 days of, lower exercise like me, or vice versa. Again, depending on your goals and what areas you are trying to develop. For me, I do my exercise during the week and try to keep the weekend for my off days, unless I run into an event that mixes up my schedule. I'm going to a wedding out of state this weekend from Thursday until Saturday. I'm going to outright miss my upper body workout this week, but I intend to do my lower body workout on this coming Sunday to make up for the lost time. But of course, the point is to develop a schedule in which you can rest enough while also maximizing on the time that you have to develop muscle growth, which should be a big part of your goal virtually regardless of your body type, as it has a key place for every type of body and goal, I would say. And that's the fourth essential point. Make sure your schedule is flexible and allows for adequate rest on a daily basis. My fifth, final point. Don't get discouraged. Don't get discouraged. Whether it's your results not showing up after a month or two of work, or simply messing yourself up on your eating habits, or missing a workout, don't get down on yourself. Do not. Maintaining healthy mental habits is as essential to making progress as maintaining, healthy physical habits. Getting down or being super harsh on yourself for making a mistake only preloads your mental outlook for failure in the future. Don't be coming up to me saying, "Yo, Jacob, I missed my gains today," and then follow it up, a little bit later with, "Yo, Jacob, I missed my gains this week." If you're getting down on yourself, you are only setting up for the possibility of slipping that hard. Remember, you are changing your life in a significant way. Your body is adapting to a new routine of muscle wear, tear, and growth. Things are going to slip from time to time. Roadblocks are going to appear in different ways, whether it's your schedule, your motivation, or your health. So allow yourself some time, because it's going to take some time in order for you to adapt both physically and mentally. To help in this process, I strongly encourage the use of a totem. If any of you have seen the film Inception, you'll know what I'm talking about. In the film, the totem is a trinket or item that the dream team has on hand at all times to remind themselves whether or not they are in a dream. It helps to keep them focused and not let them get duped into the illusions that are presented to them in the dream. So in the case of fitness, a totem could be lots of things. It could be a song that you make your alarm every morning, or for you edgy kids out there, a tattoo or a piercing that you will see every day. It could be a simple idea, a simple mantra. Today I'm stronger than I was yesterday. And by tomorrow I'll be even stronger than I am today. Even if the weights aren't going up or the progress isn't showing, I know that it's there. It's like a download bar, slowly moving forward until it hits a completion point, and then it resets to slowly move forward to the next marker towards the goal. If I had to say anything else about my own experience in this regard, of trying to maintain a healthy mindset, not become discouraged, I would say that the truest gain is when working out stops becoming this big, immovable obstacle that has to be just struggled against every day, and it just becomes, every other day. Another day, another workout. Something as regular as clockwork and as unsurprising and as routine as having cereal in the morning. Once you have reached this point, you have gained something that in many ways is greater than any physical gain you could ever make. And you are on the threshold of acclimating not only, to what you can grow into physically, but I would argue how you can grow mentally as well. So do not be discouraged, and if you find yourself becoming discouraged, take a moment to check yourself, and don't be afraid to reach out to me or your fellow fitness kin for encouragement. Don't forget to check out the super helpful resources I have in the description below, and have a blessed day.
So why don't you use the regular army? What do you need us for?
'Cause some damn fool accused you of being the best.
Dylan! You son of a bitch! What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils? Huh? Had enough?
Make it easy on yourself, Dutch.
Okay.
You
Never did know when to quit, huh?
Damn good to see you, Dutch.